Thank you, Jeff. Again, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. And Linda will record the record of attendance. And I'm going to ask for any declarations of conflicts of interest, if any. Thank you. Hearing none, we'll proceed. The fourth item on your agenda is approval of our agenda. Moved by Sandy, seconded by Pam. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. In the business part of the item is going to involve Jerry Eisner and Blaine Rooney. They're going to talk to us about the water study. I was teasing one of our fellow councillors a second ago. I looked at all those pages of information and read through them a couple of times over a period of time. And I'm waiting now to learn all about it.
I'm surprised you're still awake.
Thank you very much. I wondered if everybody around the table knows you, Jerry.
I think they do.
Yeah, okay, just making sure. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, just as a bit of background, I've changed partners since the last time I was here. The last time I was with Bill Gates. And Bill decided that retirement was necessary when he turned 80. So he retired a couple of years ago. And his replacement, I call him the new Bill Gates, is actually Blaine Rooney. And Blaine is retired from the Halifax Water Commission, where he was Director of Finance and Customer Service.
Just wanted to ask, can everyone around the table hear, and can the people in back hear?
I don't know what being taped, so you don't want all that.
Okay. Okay. I'll just change my layout here. Just as a bit of background, just so you realize, the last time there was a rate study done here, I checked, it was dated November 26, 2009. So it's been 6 years. I think you can anticipate what's going to happen with costs after 6 years before I get into it, but just as a bit of background so you understand that. Anyway, I won't bore you with a whole lot of numbers and things. What I'm going to do is just try to run through what the highlights of what I think the key items are. The chair is right. I mean, doing a water rate study is a bit of a laborious thing. It's not very exciting, but it does build on trying to follow what the Utility and Review Board gives us as a mandate, and that is to primarily come up with rates that are fair and equitable to all the customers that you have. And so that's what the objective always is. So with that, I'm just going to take you down. If you have them there, and if you don't, you can just follow me on the screen. But the first sheet is a sheet that we put in that assumes that the rates don't change. In other words, what will happen to your utility if you don't adjust rates? And with that, we can go down here, and what's going to happen to this utility right now, you're looking at a $21,000 surplus for the current, or for the year 15-16 that just finished. You're looking at going to a $139,000 deficit next year, followed by a $259,000 deficit and a $324,000 deficit. So you definitely are in the right time frame to be doing rate adjustments. We in fact talked to your staff last year. We were almost here, and then we decided that you could go one more year. And so we left, and everybody carried on, and we're back now, because at that time there was no need for an adjustment. I think there's a couple of other things I want to bring up to your attention. One is that we are taking what's called capital-led revenue. This is capital from annual earnings and using it towards capital projects in your water utility, primarily in your case replacing aging infrastructure and also replacing things like meters and things that are quite consumable. The objective is to try to get that number up to a reasonably good firm number so that your utility can operate without having to borrow money for minor things. So to keep that cash flow going. So we're looking at increasing that from basically 0 to 25,000 to 45,000 to 85. The reason for the large jump here is because up here we're paying off a loan, and it gives us some room to increase it without it impacting the rates. So instead of the rates going down and then back up, which nobody likes, just try to keep them smooth as we can through those years. The other thing that's here that's of interest to yourselves, and that is a dividend to the owner. And the owner of the utility, of course, is the town of Yarmouth. And we're building in, which has been occurring in the last number of years because we built it in at the last rate hearing, $100,000 a year. This is becoming quite common around the province. You're not unique. Dividends are being paid by water utilities back to the owner. And if you think it seems out of place, you have to remember that if the utility goes into a deficit, you're liable for that too. So you better take the good times when they're here. So it's not like it's a freebie. You take some risk when you own the water utility. So those are sort of the key issues financially that kind of guided us as we went through. What we do after that is we work on coming up with budgets for your operating, and these are done in what we call an ABC worksheet. We work with your staff. We come through and we look at how much money is going to be spent, how much money needs to be spent. Most areas we see like a 3% increase, which is what we use around the province. And even though some people will say that seems high in today's world, in fact, it isn't. What we find is that 3% in a water utility seems to work reasonably well, because you've got a lot of variables. And one of them is how cold it will be and how many pipes will break in the winter, how much you'll have to pay for frost digging and asphalt replacement, how many breaks there will be even any time of the year. And you also have to deal with an item called, in water treatment, called chemicals. And in your case, it's where is it at? Right there. It's a large item, $200,000. We are subject to international pressures on chemicals. So what we find is as the U.S. market gets more vibrant and their economy gets better, we find the price of chemicals in Canada goes up. Even though you might say it shouldn't, but a lot of those do originate out of the U.S. and are priced in U.S. dollars. So that is a substantial amount of money. So the 3% is a very appropriate number. It's a number the board uses, a number we've used. And as we say, we don't have any water utilities in the province that are rich. What we have is a whole lot of water utilities in the province that break even. So that's how the budgets are built. Like I said, we do that. We did in this case, and we added a new person right here. Under the transmission and distribution, we actually added them under 2 locations, and this is an asset manager, a new asset management position that you're having. And so we distributed that between what we call transmission and distribution, which is the pipes in the street, water treatment, and your power and pumping costs. So we distributed that out, with most of it going towards transmission, 80% of it. So we built that into the rate structure, so it goes, you see a large increase here. The board will be asking us lots of questions on that. We in fact have a special note in the schedules about it, so hopefully everybody understands what we're doing. But that is, again, given the age of the infrastructure and the amount you have to change, those positions are becoming more and more important every year. So with that, we develop sort of what you require for budgets, and then after that we look at, that's our operating budgets. The next thing we look at are your capital budgets. And with that, again, we go back to staff, and staff give us, usually from a 5-year plan, what the proposed capital spending is. We start with 15-16, which is a year that's gone by. And in fact, we verified that this is pretty close to what you spent that year, about $620,000 last year on capital improvements. You started the year last year with a $900,000 depreciation fund that you'd paid into over the years. That's a tremendous position to be in, okay? Just so you realize that. You're contributing about $300,000 a year into that fund from your rates. So we're putting money in, we take it back out, we put it in today, and we try to build to get the infrastructure renewed that you need to renew and to help offset the cost. And in the case of 15-16, it meant that we didn't have to borrow any money. The utility had the money in cash sitting there ready to be spent. When we go into 16-17, we're looking at spending about $910,000. We're looking at taking $820,000 of that out of your depreciation fund. Again, because you're starting the year with $600, you're putting over $300 in. You have literally over $900,000 available there. We do have to have a small loan, $65,000. And again, I mentioned to you that we were starting to build capital out of revenue for you, so that gets taken off of here as well. So that money is now starting to edge into that borrowing, the constant borrowing that a lot of areas get caught in. So we do the same thing year over year. The next year we have a larger debt. We do what we refer to as rate design. In other words, we try to keep the rates going up relatively equally per year if we can. So some years we'll borrow more than others. This case here, we simply don't have any more funds left in our depreciation fund, so we have to borrow. And again here, there's more borrowing in the final year, but not quite as much. And all of this rate study was based on the information we have today, which means that there's no infrastructure money in here. There may be infrastructure money which may allow you to borrow a little less. It may allow you to do more work too. It may be an opportunity for you to kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit on the aging infrastructure thing. So those are decisions you'll make, not me. I'm just building rates based on the information we have today. So that's how we do the capital. We set up, in our case, we set up fictitious loans for this money. We build that into the rate structure. If I can go back to the beginning here, and I'll just quickly run back here. You know, we have the operating budgets are up here, where we look at how much it's going to cost to operate the system. All of those accounts we had. We have the depreciation monies coming across here, where we look at how much money we have to pay in each year to make sure that we can depreciate the new assets. And then down here we have existing loans at the top line, and then down below we have the new loans that we've built into the rate study, assuming that you borrow that amount of money. So that's the basis for how much money we need in the utility. The next question that we have to address in a water rate study is how to divide that between fire protection charges and customer charges. Fire protection charge is a service provided by the utility to the town of Yarmouth. Okay, the water utility's in the business of selling water. As a sideline business, they build larger tanks and bigger pipes and put in fire hydrants, and they in turn charge the town of Yarmouth for that. We being all the same owner, but nevertheless, from a public utility point of view, we have to separate those two out. And we do that by looking at how the assets are used in the utility. And I tell everybody the same thing, that there's two examples that make it quite clear to me. One is, if I said to you, how much use is a fire hydrant to delivering water to a household? The answer is of no use. So it gets allocated 0% to general service and 100% to fire protection. Conversely, if we go to the meters that measure the water going into a house, really doesn't fight much of a fire. So it gets assigned 100% to the customer and 0% to fire. And everything else gets divvied up based on sort of a set of rules and formulas that we follow. Some of them are guidelines from the board. They will allow us to take 90% of like a treatment plant and assign that to customers, 10% to fire, mainly because the treatment plant keeps working in the event of a fire. So it does generate some water for use at that point in time. In your case, we also have a couple of different structures that we've worked with the board in the past, and we actually have 80% to general service for power, for source of supply structures, and 20% to fire protection. The rest of it, transmission mains, for those that realize it or work with it, pipes in the street are generally sized much larger than what they need for the customer. They're sized to fight fires. So about 40% of the capacity of the pipe in the street is used for delivering water. 60% is in case you have a fire. So they get split up 40-60 accordingly. Yeah, it is quite surprising. But you can deliver water to a town the size of Yarmouth with very small diameter pipes if all you want to do is deliver water. But if you want to fight fire, you need big pipes. You need a lot of water. The fire department wants it. They have to have it. They need thousands of gallons quite often in a minute. Like 2,000 gallons a minute wouldn't be uncommon for a structure down on the waterfront or some of the brick structures on Main Street.
2,000 gallons a minute, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah, even to fight a residential fire in a residential neighborhood, they're usually rated at least 800 gallons a minute that they want to meet the insurance requirements. That's what the Insurance Advisory Organization puts forward as being the minimum amount that they want to see available. Yeah, some of these things are driven by outside sources. The insurance companies do have a say because they're taking the risk. And so we do that for each year. And then what we do is we sit down and we start working out how much the fire protection charge is going to be. In your case, what we saw happening was we saw a slight decline happening in the fire protection charge. We've worked with the board and with the other utilities, but our recommendation is, what we've built in here, is that we just hold the fire protection charge at its current level for the next 2 years, and then we allow the board's calculation to take over. So you're currently, the town is currently paying the utility about $508,000 a year. We would do that for the first 2 test years. And then the third year, that rate would actually increase to about $517,000. So even though you've earned a $100,000 dividend from the water utility, you still get to pay them $500,000 for the fire protection. So that's why I said it's a very small business circle that we work in here. So that's what we're proposing you do, is hold the fire protection rate. It would have went down about $40,000, I think, the first year. But we're proposing that you should hold it at its current level and then let it just go at the current level and then go up by the formulas that from the accounting handbook from the Utility and Review Board to $517,000 3 years from now, 2018-19. So with that, we then, this is my favorite sheet. This is my friend Blaine, who's an accountant. As you can tell, I'm an engineer. This is a sheet whereby we calculate what's called the return on rate base. If you were a public or a private utility and you were operating, say, like Nova Scotia Power, you would want about 9%, 7 to 9% return, so that you could pay your shareholders, you could return on your investment, all those things. The very opposite is really the apropos thing for water utilities. The lower you can keep them, the nicer it feels, because it means you don't have a lot of debt. And in your case, you're in great territory. You're in the 1 to 2% range. We've got utilities that run in the 7% range, which is not so good, because means they've borrowed a lot of money over the years, and they're really gobbling up a lot of it to pay loans. So that has no impact on rates. It's more of a measure for the board to look at to see how it's one of the measures, the health of the utility. What we do after that is we divide the money up between. We go and we take the total amount of revenue we need, which in your case is about $2.5 million in 16-17. We take off that $508,000 for the fire protection. What's left, basically $2 million. We take that and divide it up between base charges, which you pay every quarter, whether you use water or not, and how much you sell water for. And so we split that up. And again, we have a guideline from the Utility and Review Board, which we followed in your case, that tells us basically how to allocate those funds between the two sources. It works out in your case, and this is a number we track and follow, that you earn about 40% of your revenue from base and about 60% of it from the water you sell. So that's what we call a risk factor, because the base charges you collect whether anyone uses water, but 60% of your revenue depends on you selling water. Okay, so we're fairly conscious of that. If you get the base charge too high, then people won't conserve, and if you get it too low, then you run the risk of running out of money, because if your customers don't use as much water as you think they will, you haven't got much of a cushion there to set on. So you have about a 40% cushion. Just as a way of a very small utility might have 50% of the revenue from base. When I say small, I mean like a couple of hundred, 400, 300 customers at the most. And a very large utility like Halifax Water might be 25% of their revenue from base and the rest from what we call at-risk money, because they sell so much water. So we do that. The next thing we look at, and we talked about this earlier, is your customer counts and where you're at. And in your case, we go back, we're history buffs at heart, so we go back and look at how many customers you had the last time we were here, and you've actually gone down about 23 customers since 2009. And it's primarily in the area of the 5/8 inch customers, the residential customer. So you've dropped about 25 of those in the last 6 years. The remaining balance, what we do, just so you realize that it's that we then take the numbers and we calculate what we're going to charge for the base charge. To do that, we use a little factor that comes out of the American Water Works Association, which is, if you have questions, just ask away.
Thank you. Are at least 23 or 25 customers, how are they, how do you identify them? Are they
We don't.
single homes, single-family homes?
No, they're customers that had 5/8 inch meters, so they could be small businesses too.
All right.
They could be businesses along Main Street that might have a 5/8 inch meter. But primarily small customers are the only ones that would have a 5/8. 5/8 is what we refer to as a residential meter, okay?
And what size one that in a small apartment house?
Oh, they would usually have 3/4, and then if there's several units, they might have a 1 inch. But a 3/4 inch would be more common if you have like 2 or 3 units. Two-family home, you could get away with a 5/8, but you'd probably notice some low water pressure in the house. Yeah, I'm not saying people don't do it, because they do. Yeah. We do look at charging. We actually charge more for larger meters than the base charge. We do that on the capacity of the meter. So if I take a 4-inch meter right here, it'll actually transfer through it 25 times more water than that 5/8 inch meter. Anybody that's worked around hydraulics know that if you double the size of the pipe, you more than double the amount of fluid you can put through it. And that's the same with water meters. These numbers, by the way, are all tested numbers and approved by the Utility and Review Board. They're actually tested by the American Water Works Association. So we use them on every rate study. So that's how we arrive at the different rates, which we do on the next page, where we say, hey, that average customer is going to pay $49.25 a quarter, where if you had a 4-inch meter, you would actually pay $1,148 for that same base charge, because they're paying basically 25 times more. So that's how that's done. I'm just telling you this so that you don't think that we kind of dream these things up out of the blue. We don't. Occasionally we might try to do that, but the board usually stops us fairly quickly. Anyway, so we do that for each year. We come up with base charges for each year. And then, needless to say, we look at how much water we can sell. If I can get up here. And in this area, we do have some changes we are suggesting to you. You have currently what's called a 2-block water rate structure, okay? They were something that was really popular in the 70s and 80s. And in that time, what was happening was that large water customers were buying water at a discount the more water they bought. There is no mathematical reason for that. At the time, I think probably we had very few water treatment plants in Nova Scotia. We were primarily just adding chlorine, or as one fellow said to me, we just took a bottle of Javix and strained out the fish and the water was delivered. Now we have more complicated treatment plants. As you saw, we're going to spend over $200,000 a year just on chemicals alone, not just running the chemical part of the plant. So we're suggesting that you start phasing down the amount of water that you sell at a discount, because anytime you sell water at a discount means that someone else has to pay more for it. So that there's not really any magic in that, because we need the money. So if we discount it to this person, we need so much money, we have to raise this guy's bill to pay for it. So by selling water at a big block rate, which is primarily the big customers are the processing plants, and the town of Yarmouth is actually one of the big customers at the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, so you're one of your own customers where you're discounting water to yourself. Right now, it's set up that after 1 million gallons a year, you start getting a discount, okay? And what we're suggesting in this rate study and how it's built is that would go from 1 million gallons a year right here to 1.4 million gallons the first year, to 2.4 million in the second year, and to 4 million in the third year. That would cut down on the amount of water that you're discounting the price on from 46 million gallons to 41 to 35 to 27 million. And it's our recommendation that you go forward to the board. I'm sure the industries and things may come and say that it's going to be their ruination, but we find is that generally water is not the most expensive thing they have. Water is probably one of the cheapest items that they have there. The other thing that all I can tell you, if you want to change it, you can change it, because we still have that capability. But if you do, it just means that all your other customers pay more. So it's not magical. So if you say I'm not going to discount it to this one, then the other people have to pay more. There's no short around that. We need so much revenue to run it, and we either divvy it up this way or not. Certainly, Halifax Water, which Blaine is abundantly clear with, did away with all second block rates probably 15 years ago. They used to discount water to things like the brewery, and they stopped. And, you know, there is no mathematical reason for it. It doesn't cost any less to make that gallon of water. Yeah, it's the cost of business. And like I said, the water doesn't cost any less just because you made more of it. You know, it's so much a gallon, and if you make twice that amount, everybody may get a slightly lower rate, but it's only because you've made you know, you've got an efficiency of scale in making it. So that's our recommendation to you, is that we do that, and that's what we've built the rate structure around. So with that, we then start calculating how much you will sell water for. You're currently selling it for $4.95 for the first 1,000 gallons for the 1,000 gallons to households, and $3.12 when you discount it. We're looking at changing that to $5.85 and $4. Oh, and one thing I wanted to bring up back here, I'm going to back you up a little bit. We also track what's been happening, and we talked to one of your counselors here today on this, is that the amount of water being used by the average 5/8 inch customer is going down year over year. Okay, I went back and tracked, well, I tracked on your sheet here. The last time we were here, you were selling basically on an annual basis about 50,000 gallons to the average 5/8 inch customer. You're currently selling about 40,000 gallons to that same customer. It works out to about a 2% decline per year. You're still fairly high. We're seeing rates much lower than that in other areas. So we've built into this rate study a 2% decline annually in those 5/8 inch customers. So we're going to sell less water each year. You'll see that we start selling 229 million and change, or 700,000, to 227 million, to 225 million, to 223 million. So we see it going down, the amount of water. Now, we always get asked the question why. One of the big reasons is smaller households. So even though we have a home, we don't have as many people living in them anymore. You know, large families are a thing of the past. I grew up in one, but no one would have a family that size anymore. The other thing is that as time goes on, all of the things that we use in the household use less water. So from the toilets in the bathroom to the automatic washers. The old top-loading washers used about 30 gallons every cycle, every time they did a wash. The new smaller ones use 9. Some of them are using 7. So, you know, you change that out overnight, and suddenly if you're doing your laundry once a day, you can see where things are going to change pretty dramatically. The same thing holds true to dishwashers, to almost anything. Toilets, yeah, toilets are a favorite. They used to be 13.5 liters, now they're down to 4.5 liters. So, you know, so those things have all cut down, and like I said, the other thing is smaller family sizes. So we've actually built that in. We've built in that we think you will continue that, and that you will see that decline. And it's not something that we're being clairvoyant about. We're seeing it everywhere. So we're seeing just decline in consumption. So with all of that built in, we then start looking at what the rates will be like. And we did develop for you too a bulk water sale rate, which is something you've had in the past. I think it's primarily for shipboard sales and also it's really for shipboard sales more than anything. So then we start looking at what the rates will be like. And this is where we go to, if you got the thing there, it's page 32. But we're looking at what we call the average customer. So we just take the 2,800 or 2,900 5/8 inch customers, how much water you sold them. Yeah, I'll speed up a little bit. And we look at what the impact will be. And what we're seeing is that you're currently at about, on average, around $100 a quarter for basin consumption. We're looking at seeing that move to $108 a quarter. Moving from 108 to 114, so the percentage-wise, like nothing, as Mark Twain said, nothing lies like statistics. So it says it's 8.6, it falls to 5.3, and then in the final year, it's down to about 1.4%, and that's where you're leveling out at. I did, for those, I track all sorts of things. One of the things I track is where do you fit with the rest of the world? And I'll just put you up here. You're actually in slightly below the average cost in the province. So this is everybody else's water bills in the province. You'll see a whole bunch of them in the $50 range. If you wonder why, most of them are on wells. Okay, they have no treatment costs at all. Town of Amherst adds chlorine, and that's it. That's the only cost they have, is just chlorinating the water. And so you find yourself down here, and like I put you in and sort of darkened, and I put it in as proposed, but you'll find yourself in amongst, you know, a couple that are on wells, canning and things, $108, $110. And if you want to go down and see how bad it gets, we're at Mahone Bay at $213 and a quarter, so twice what you're paying here. No, that's not in your database. I can provide this sheet to Jeff if you like. Yeah, yeah, okay. Because I also do a calculation high, low, mean, because I'm a mathematician at heart. So, so the mean is actually 122, and the medium in the province is 118. So you're below both of those. So you're in. I think you're in great shape, to be honest with you. To tell you the truth, it's, you know. Yeah, no, it is a useful sheet, and like I said, we track it all the time because we try to keep these up to date if we can on where we're at and where the utilities are in the province. And it's constantly in motion because people are getting new rate structures brought in. Anyway, that's where you're at, and I can make a copy of this available to you, Jeff. I'll just PDF it and send it down. Okay, so that's where you fit. There's not much more to my presentation, a little bit, and like I said, there's where your rates are. We also look at your rules and regulations and where you have things. We are suggesting and talk to staff about adding what they call a new account creation fee. This is for the staff time in the front office to set up accounts when you get new customers come in. That's a clause that's being put in most utilities in the province. And so we've added that to yours, that you can charge for setting up new accounts because there is time involved in it. Somebody has to pay for it and cost. And the other thing we're adding to everybody's is because the banks have caught on the idea if you have a non-negotiable check for $20, they can charge you $60 in service fees. We're adding a clause in that says any additional charges levied by the bank, you can back charge the customer if they send you a check that is rather robust and rubbery. So, because we're finding the banks are really, really hammering that one for all they're worth. The only other one that we're adding that after discussions again with your staff was down here, and I'll get to it, and it's what they call a rule and regulation, and it's one called billing. There has been controversy in the province, I don't think here, with how to calculate a bill for somebody that stays 2 out of the 3 months of a quarter. So the first part of this just simply states how you're going to calculate the bill. It's the way most people have been doing it, but some people seem to get angsty about it, and so the board's been asking us to put it in everybody's. The second one is one that we've been doing in a lot of areas, in that the utility can charge the base charge for the entire year for seasonal customers. Okay, that may sound a little off, but it's not, because the base charge means that the service is available. When you take water, it means you're using the service. But just because you shut your house down and go away for the winter doesn't mean the service is not available. The service is available, you're just not using it. And if you don't pay for it, then all the people who stayed in town, put up with the cold and the dampness and everything else, have to pay for it. So it's not so dramatic here. The most dramatic case we've had is Bedeck. Bedeck loses over 1/3 of their customers every winter. Which means that the existing customer base has to pay a fearful amount of money just to cover the base charges. So we're adding this to a lot of places. A lot of communities are saying, you know, we're getting more and more people that are snowbirding on us, and so we're adding that in. That's it, Mr. Chair. Sorry I took a little over time.
That's fine. I understand a little bit more, marginally more. I'll take direction from staff, Jeff or Jerry, as to how we proceed from here, and any comments or questions, please turn your lights on, fellow councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the rate study was done at our request to determine whether an increase in rates was warranted, and as you saw from the presentation, and you heard from the consultant, it wasn't last year, but it clearly is now. And so the process would be is the utility would pass a motion to accept the study and to proceed to make application to the Utility Review Board for a rate review.
Turn light on so everybody. Lights, so,
I'm on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to, I would make that motion to accept the study.
thank you very
And,
much. Make the application,
And
yeah, as Jeff has read out. Do we have a seconder? And turn your light on. Who? All right, seconded by Sandy Dennis. Question, discussion, any more questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you very much, Jerry, and thank you very much, Brian.
Very welcome. Thank you all for your patience. Sorry we went so long.
Jeff.
Yeah, so effectively, what happens, because it is a regulated utility, the 3 years budgets that were presented and used in modeling here essentially are your budgets for the utility, subject to some adjustment year to year. But by approving the rate study, you're conditionally approving the budget subject to the rates being approved. And so we will be talking about the town's budget later today, but the information contained in this report is the same information that Jerry would present to you normally on a year-to-year basis. And so because we don't know yet what the rates are as a result of this application, we'll assume that this represents your budget subject to the rates being approved.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Anybody else? Motion for adjournment, I believe, is in order. Thank you very much, Mayor Mood. And thank you, everybody.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your patience.